Kelli María Korducki, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been writing about something called the daughterhood penalty. What is the daughterhood penalty?
Yeah, well, the daughterhood penalty is the kind of unspoken tax that often falls onto adult daughters of aging parents who make sacrifices, career sacrifices, time sacrifices to care for their parents and to provide unpaid care. And yeah, that adds up to lost earning opportunities.
You actually give a number. You say that on average, you call it the millennial daughter tax. It's on average, women are losing out in $300,000 on average of savings over their lifetimes, over their sort of career lifetimes because of this daughterhood penalty. I mean, that's crazy. Why is that?
Well, it's pretty simple. The amount of time that it takes to be available to show up and to attend to a progressively declining elderly person, it ends up eating into other responsibilities. You know, there's only so much time in which to attend to various responsibilities in one's life, and often it's the career that ends up taking a hit. And with that comes past promotions, missed opportunities to earn more, or even job loss, or having to leave the workforce, and then that contributes to implications for long-term retirement security and savings. So really, there's this cascading effect that just stems from the need to plug this gap.
Why is it a daughterhood penalty and not just a caregiving penalty? You're very specific about this. You say this is daughters. This is not, everybody. Why is that?
Well, I should clarify that the gender gap in caregiving for family members, unpaid caregiving, is really, really narrowing. There's an almost equal distribution of handling any caregiving responsibilities between the genders. But when you look at the hours spent, when you look at who ends up becoming the primary caregiver, when we're looking at extended families or children of the elderly or friends, it's women disproportionately shoulder the largest share. And so, that really comes down to societal gender norms. It comes down to the way things have kind of always been done. And women also pay a steeper price professionally when they are called away to attend to elderly parents or kids, or we've heard about the motherhood penalty too, which is kind of a similar phenomenon, that employers are not always the most flexible. There's not really the kind of infrastructure to accommodate people who need to take care of other people outside of their jobs and who need to divide their time in that fashion.
How did this story come to you? I mean, you profile a number of people who have had this experience, and we're going to get to that in a minute. I do want to hear some of their stories, but how did this story come to you?
Yeah, well, we've been hearing about this caregiving crisis for a long time, and 2026 is kind of a milestone year in that the very oldest baby boomers are turning 80 this year. So with the boomer population rapidly aging, this is going to become a rapidly compounding crisis. It already is beginning to. It's really mind-blowing. Like, this is such a huge issue, and people are so kind of at the ends of their ropes, really feeling kind of alone and isolated in this seemingly intractable problem.
And the thing about it is, you follow women who are, I'll just put this in air quotes, doing everything right, or who had done everything right. I mean, these are people who had stable jobs, they had built their careers, they had savings, they were planners. They thought they had kind of set up systems to address these issues. This isn't something that people just kind of, gave no thought to, and they still find themselves depleted, overextended, going broke. having to dip into, not just exhausting their parents' savings to take care of them, but dipping into their own savings, which then compromises their own retirement, which they then are sort of worried about passing on the same legacy to their kids, if they have kids. Why is it like that? Like, what's the big picture here? Is there something about the way we have thought about or not thought about aging in America that is leading to these outcomes? I mean, Social Security in part is supposed to have addressed this, isn't it?
Yeah, well, one of the huge issues is that when these programs were put into place, the average life expectancy was much shorter. I think the average life expectancy was something like 68 years for the average American when Medicare was put into place. So, now people are living a lot longer, and the retirement phase of life can span decades. So there's that. And also just the costs of care and caregiving have dramatically risen. Healthcare costs in general have dramatically risen over the years. And we just don't have the kind of financial investment and long-term planning that's necessary to meet these needs. I mean, most of us are going to need some long-term care for probably years. And there is very, very little foresight into just structurally dealing with that. And also at the individual level, it's just not something that anybody wants to think about.
You point out in the piece that 7 in 10 Americans over the age of 65 will need long-term care, yet more than 60% of adults over 50 don't realize that Medicare does not cover it. And that gap is important because people sort of in their 50s should be thinking about what's coming down the pike. And at that point, it's harder to catch up from a savings perspective. What are some of the stories that you report? Some of the people's stories that you reported on that stood out to you?
Yeah, so I spoke with one woman who's in her early 40s, and her mother actually is not particularly aged. She's a middle boomer in her, I believe, late 60s, early 70s. And this woman is in her early 40s and basically dropped everything at the age of 23 to become her mother's full-time caregiver after her mother had a surgery to correct a degenerative congenital spinal condition that completely inhibited her mobility. She needed full-time care after that. And so this woman who'd been working as a manager at a beauty supply store in New York City just quit her job, moved in with her mother. And 17 years later, she's still living with her mom. Her entire life is about caring for her mom. Her mom needs help bathing, dressing, dealing with wound care. She's at a very high risk for falls. She needs to be monitored.
Constantly monitored, yeah. How does she feel about it?
It's been really hard. I mean, she doesn't think of it as a waste, but she does think of it as a sacrifice. Mm-hmm. It's been a huge sacrifice, and she's given up a lot. She's given up a career. She's given up the ability to save for her own future. She's terrified about what's going to happen when it comes time for her own retirement. She has no savings. It's been really, really hard. And also very just socially isolating. She told me, I really, really wish that I had just some kind of a partner in crime. Like, I wish that I had a sister who would help or any support.
I take it she's an only child.
Yeah, she has a brother.
She has a brother. Okay, so let's ask the hard question about that. Like, why isn't the brother helping more? Like, why isn't this burden, responsibility, let's put it that way, more equally shared?
I do know that there's some estrangement there. But this is a common story. Mm-hmm. Like, the people who are the closest geographically or who are the daughters are the ones who end up stepping up. Because it's what needs to be done.
Filial duty is a critical part of most cultures. I mean, most cultures acknowledge the fact that children have a responsibility to their parents. They have a duty
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
to
And I would say
to
that comes through in this phenomenon. It seems to be more acutely felt by daughters.
I'm just trying to sort of think. Some people are going to hear our conversation differently. Some people are going to be, I mean, some people will listen to that and say, well, so what? That's just how it is. That's how it's always been, right? But some people might argue that these women are making choices and that they could make different choices. Like, what would you say to that? They could make the same choice their brothers are making.
I asked versions of that question, and the resounding answer was sort of like, well, that wasn't an option. Like,
Yeah.
just doing nothing is not an option. Whatever career situation or professional opportunities or whatever is at stake for me, like, I'm not gonna risk putting my parents in a subpar.
Or in danger,
Yeah.
because some of the cases that you spoke about, many of the people who you profiled in the piece, I mean, the fact of the matter is these seniors could not live alone.
Yeah.
Or the care that they require, partly because of dementia,
Mm-hmm.
is that they can't, it just isn't safe for them to live alone. And it's just a lot more expensive to care for folks who are living with some of these health conditions than perhaps was envisioned when these policies sort of took hold. I am curious if you think that, given that so many people are dealing with these circumstances, whether there's any policy energy around dealing with this as a society. I mean, I'm thinking about, for example, New Jersey Senator Andy Kim, a United States Senator from New Jersey, has talked publicly about his father's Alzheimer's and the difficulty of caring for him. And he, of course, has a demanding job, and he's a son, but feels a sense of responsibility. And I just wonder if you're seeing any sense of sort of policy momentum around this.
So there's the WISH Act, which was a 2025 bipartisan proposal for federal long-term care insurance benefits that would help older adults afford home-based care, which is kind of the goal for most people, is to keep their older loved ones at home. And that's also aimed to reduce the reliance on Medicaid for long-term care for those who are eligible. The idea is that would be funded through a payroll tax on employees and employers, which seems like a very sensible move. But yeah, it's really been difficult to get serious momentum on this issue. I think for a number of reasons, one of them being simply that it's not something that people like to think and plan about, but also it's sort of seen as women's work. And I think deprioritized for that specific reason.
It's interesting because, with childcare, there's all this sort of, I don't know, heat, I guess, around it. Like, the whole question of, should this country do more to support women in the workforce? Because now, of course, we have a counter movement where people are saying, well, women should stay home with their kids. But, again, you can choose to have kids or not, but you can't choose to be somebody's child. That's a decision that's made for you. And so one of the things, I guess, that strikes me about it is there's all this heat. There's a lot of heat and some sort of, I guess I would sort of say, kind of cultural sort of anger and back and forth about childcare. But there's almost silence about this, about taking care of elders. And I just wonder why that is. I think, is it because people are just so exhausted just by living their lives? They don't have time to be involved in the public space, or what is it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that might be part of it. But also, for all the heat and discussion about childcare, that hasn't really generated much in terms of actual policy, has it? Certainly not at the national level. It is interesting that there is this conversation happening on the one end and maybe not so much on the other. And part of that also, I think, has to do with, again, what I said earlier, is just people don't like to think about aging. People don't like to think about this stuff until it's already in their faces, because it's kind of scary and unpleasant. And also just what aging means and looks like now is so new. 20, 30, 40 years ago, it wasn't common to live kind of for 20 years, 30 years after retirement, and with increasing health and mobility and perhaps cognitive limitations during that period of time. Like there are people who need long-term care now for 20 years, 30 years, and that's pretty increasingly common.
Before we let you go, have you, forgive me for asking this, but I'm going to ask, has doing this reporting made you think differently about what's next for you? Like how you might have to live your life going forward?
It's something that I think about all the time. Anyway, my parents are boomers, and I don't live near them. And I'm the only daughter of three. That being said, my brothers are wonderful, and I know that my brothers will step up and that we'll be a team when the time comes. But yeah, I think about it all the time. Like, where will I live? Will I stay where I'm currently living? Will I move to be closer to my parents? Yes, I think about it all the time. It's a reality.
Kelli María Korducki, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you so much for having me.